During the winter season, two individuals sit in a dimly lit restaurant, discussing the circulating rumors about a madman who keeps appearing on war-torn battlefields. This so-called madman is merely a mercenary, yet he fights like a man who has no regard for his own life. After each battle ends, he reportedly vanishes, only to reappear in another conflict, as if chasing death itself. One of the men finds this behavior odd. Most mercenaries value their lives, he says. But this one, he always walks away muttering, "I survived another battlefield." What's most intriguing is the pattern. Whenever there's a war against the Empire, this mercenary is guaranteed to show up. Some whisper that he's not in it for money, but for revenge. Chilled by the tale, the other man shudders. "Do we know who he is?" "No one's certain," comes the reply. "But there are rumors. They say he was once a prince of a fallen kingdom, now looking for a place to die." The scene shifts. Elsewhere, in a quiet, desolate area, a wounded man leans against a large stone. Before him stands an armored figure. The armored man removes his helmet, revealing his face as he speaks. So, in the end, the third prince of Briol, Yuri Briol, has come to rely on self-taught methods. His name, once noble, is now synonymous with disgrace, the very man blamed for bringing ruin to his kingdom. Nearly a decade earlier, Yuri arrived late to a secret meeting. A woman with golden hair stood waiting. Yuri approached her apologetically. "I'm sorry I'm late. My father called me in for an emergency meeting. I sent word through the messenger." She said nothing. "I know I'm always like this," Yuri continued, "but please forgive me. Just this once." The woman was none other than Princess Katerina Ivarna Grandzine, heir to the Empire. After a pause, she finally spoke. "Do you really think you're the only one who's busy? I had to sneak all the way here while dodging guards, nobles, and attention." "I know," Yuri said softly. "I know, but you must understand. I have to be cautious. My father is preparing to leave the throne soon." Then, after a moment of silence, he added with regret, "Maybe I shouldn't have told anyone that." Hearing herself referred to as just one of the others, enraged Katerina. Her eyes blazed with fury as she threw the necklace Yuri had once given her. "Then why did you give this to me if you don't even trust me?" she demanded. "Give it to a woman you can trust." With that, she turned away, her voice cold as ice. "Don't contact me until I reach out first." Yuri shouted after her, begging her to stop, but she never looked back. After she was gone, Yuri stood in silence, lost in turmoil. What should I do now? He wondered. Winning her forgiveness would be nearly impossible. As he muttered to himself in the shadows of his thoughts, an unknown figure observed him from afar, hidden in the darkness. The man chuckled quietly before disappearing. From that day forward, the already fragile relationship between Briol and the Empire completely collapsed. The Empire escalated from petty provocations to outright violations of treaties. Tensions boiled over, and war was no longer a question of if, but when. The day finally arrived. The Empire launched a full-scale invasion of Briol. The royal castle was engulfed in flames, and the battlefield, soldiers died by the dozens. Civilians and guards scrambled to evacuate, shouting warnings to anyone near the castle to flee. Yuri arrived at the castle's gates only to find it consumed by fire. The war had truly begun. Time seemed to stand still. Endless sacrifices followed. Still alive and fighting, Yuri pressed on, driven by the weight of his fallen kingdom. In the thick of battle, he turned to a fellow soldier named Joshua. "Where are the reinforcements?" he demanded. But things had changed. The man once hailed as the strongest warrior on the continent, Briol's greatest weapon. King Fury Briol, Yuri's father, had vanished. Without him, the tide of war turned sharply in the Empire's favor. At first, Yuri tried to dismiss the timing as coincidence. Deep down, though, he was denying an ugly truth. But after countless battles and brushes with death, Yuri could no longer ignore it. He came to a grim conclusion. Katerina had betrayed him. He had only ever told one person about his father's plans and departure, and that person was Katerina. As soon as his father left Briol, the Empire launched its invasion. Desperate for hope, Yuri tried to convince himself it was all in his head. He sent her a message via pigeon. Her reply? A simple apology. Nothing else. And that crushed whatever hope Yuri had left. Back on the battlefield, The enemy identified him. "It's the third prince," someone shouted. "Take him down," and Briol falls with him. They charged toward him. Rage and despair overtook Yuri as he fought. He take down one enemy, then blocked another strike. Again and again, he fought until his strength began to fade. The enemies kept coming. An entire unit now rushed toward him. Realizing his survival was unlikely, Yuri found himself wondering, "Is this where I die?" An enemy soldier lunged. Yuri raised his sword, but it was too late. He couldn't react in time. Suddenly, a soldier named Laurent threw himself into the path of the blow, taking the hit meant for Yuri. Collapsing to the ground, Laurent used his final breath to whisper, "Run. You must survive, Prince Yuri." Yuri tried to reach him, but others held him back, shielding him as they fended off the enemy. "You must retreat," one of the soldiers shouted. "If something happens to you, Briol is finished." They pushed him away, forcing him to flee. Yuri ran. Enemy shouts followed him. Some gave chase, but he managed to outpace them and slipped into an old warehouse. There, he crouched behind stacked crates, breathing heavily. The sounds of soldiers searching nearby echoed through the walls. As he sat there, he knew he couldn't hide forever. He had to act. What now? He asked himself. Where's father? He feared the answer. If the king hadn't returned by now, then he was likely dead. Suddenly, the warehouse door creaked open. Yuri's heart pounded as a soldier stepped inside and spotted him. The man began walking toward him. In that moment, Yuri realized something. He didn't want to die. Not yet. He fell to his knees and begged, "Please, let me live. Briol has no future if I die here." In his mind, Yuri saw the faces of those who had sacrificed themselves for him. His knights, his comrades, his people. He had to survive. For them. The soldier bowed his head slightly and said, "One day, the Empire will pay for its sins." Then, with urgency in his voice, he informed Yuri that enemy forces would arrive soon and urged him to flee. Yuri turned and ran into the forest, a single resolution burning in his heart: to survive at all costs, to rebuild Briol, and to take revenge on the Empire. But that resolve, he would soon realize, was nothing more than a child's fantasy. Reality was far crueler. In the end, everyone in Briol died. That devastating truth made Yuri question everything. What was the point of this attack? He wondered bitterly. The final shred of hope he had clung to, Katerina, had shattered. With nothing left to hold on to, Yuri gave in to despair and dedicated himself to vengeance. Clutching his mother's necklace, he imagined that someday, someone would appear and finally put him out of his misery. And so, Yuri began seeking out death. He charged into battle after battle, desperately chasing an end. In the present moment, clad in his war-worn armor, Yuri stood once again on a battlefield. Across from him, another armored soldier let out a cruel laugh. "So this is what you've become," he sneered. "Throwing yourself into every dangerous fight, just to escape your guilt." The armored man looked down on Yuri with contempt. "You don't even deserve a peaceful death." Yuri didn't recognize him, but his expression shifted when the armored man calmly said, "Yuri Briol, the third prince of the fallen kingdom." Yuri froze. Shock washed over him. No one should know who he was. Everyone who had known his true identity was supposed to be dead. The armored man stepped forward. "Everything that happened in Briol was your fault." Then, without another word, he removed his helmet. Yuri's eyes widened in disbelief. It was Laurent, the soldier who had once thrown himself in harm's way to protect him. The man Yuri had believed had died on the battlefield now stood alive before him. Laurent drew his sword. "You destroyed everything. Because of you, the Briol kingdom fell. Because of you, the Flandret household's honor and its sacred oath, my family's legacy, were shattered in an instant. You ruined my faith, my pride, and my name." Yuri could hardly breathe. He stared at Laurent, unable to form words. He shouldn't be alive. And yet, here he was, like a ghost risen to pass judgment. Yuri dropped to his knees, accepting the accusation. He didn't fight back. Then Laurent struck at Yuri with his sword and take him down. Yuri expected to feel peace, release. But instead, guilt swelled within his chest, heavier than ever. Just as darkness began to overtake him, the necklace in his hand began to glow. In that final moment, he heard his father's voice in his mind. "A true heir of Briol never abandons their honor, no matter what happens." Everything faded. Then, suddenly, Yuri opened his eyes. He was a child again. Someone was calling Yuri. He had been asleep for 3 whole days. As his vision slowly adjusted, he realized the voice belonged to his father, the king of Briol. His father gently asked if he was all right. Yuri, still dazed, sat up on the bed, stunned to see his father in front of him. How could this be? His father was supposed to be dead. As confusion washed over him, Yuri began to believe his father must have ended up in hell as well. Yuri could accept that he deserved damnation, but his father? That didn't feel right. The king looked at his son, clearly perplexed by his ramblings. But before he could respond, Yuri reached out, grabbed his hand, and said with a wistful expression, "It all makes sense now. You always preached about honor." His father's face darkened with irritation. Without warning, he slapped Yuri across the face, snapping him out of his spiral. Tears welled in Yuri's eyes. "Even in hell, you still haven't kicked your habit of hitting me," he muttered, then added half-jokingly, "You should repent. It's not too late." As Yuri spoke, a soft breeze drifted in, carrying a lone leaf through the window. He turned toward it and froze. Outside, there were no flames, no screams, no demons. There was no hell, just a peaceful palace bathed in sunlight. Maids were laughing as they carried out their daily tasks. Yuri's gaze drifted to his father and 2 brothers. Panic swelled in his chest, and then everything went black again. His collapse shocked everyone in the room. The maids rushed to his aid, frantic and confused. When he regained consciousness again, Yuri realized something unthinkable. He was 13 years old. At first, he thought it was a dream, or perhaps a long and vivid déjà vu. But no matter how many times he tried to wake up, the dream never ended. Instead, memories long buried began to replay in exact detail. Eventually, Yuri had no choice but to accept the impossible. He had returned to the past. Now seated at the dining table with his family, Yuri stared in awe at familiar faces. It was the spring of the year he turned 13, the beginning of everything, the beginning of the end. And somehow, he had been given one more chance. The next morning, Yuri was still in bed when his maid entered and drew the curtains. "Wake up, young master," she called cheerfully. "You instructed me to wake you early today." Yuri remained motionless until she added, "You'll be late for your sword training." In an instant, he shot up from bed, fully awake. He quickly instructed the maid, Aina, to prepare his clothes, but then paused, remembering he needed to bathe first. Aina, a beautiful brown-haired maid, gave him a small smile. "Calm down, young master. Let's start with washing your face." Yuri froze. In his mind, an image surfaced. Aina had also died in that attack by the Empire. That horrible vision silenced him. Moments later, he spoke again. "Aina, slap me." Aina blinked, stunned. "Why, young master? Are you telling me to commit treason?" Yuri smiled faintly. "No, I'm ordering you." "As a noble." Aina hesitated. "Are you sure?" Yuri nodded. "I'm a noble. I won't take back my words." Before he could say another word, Aina slapped him. A sharp, echoing sound that rang through the entire castle. The scene shifted to the training grounds. Yuri was practicing swordsmanship with another student, his cheeks still red from Aina's slap. He had forgotten how strong she was. Yet despite the mark on the 3rd prince's face, no one offered him ointment. Not even the instructor training him said a word. Yuri wasn't pleased. Their sword instructor, Bernard, didn't correct his form. He simply made Yuri spar, fulfilling the day's training quota without much interest. Yuri found it odd. Why does Bernard only focus on sparring? Isn't swordsmanship more than that? Yuri remembered how, in his past life, Bernard had once told the king that Yuri had talent, real talent. But he also said that Yuri wasted it. If the 3rd prince had just been a little more diligent, Bernard had once remarked, he could have become Briol's greatest blessing. Now, with all the weight of his past and the second chance in his hands, Yuri wasn't going to waste it this time. At that time, Yuri had overheard their conversation, and that was when Bernard stopped paying him much attention. Since Yuri had been uncooperative during training, Bernard reduced their sessions to mere sparring. Looking back, Yuri realized he had made a critical mistake. Even after hearing those harsh words, instead of working harder, he had only grown lazier. Now, in the present training session, Yuri raised his sword and pointed it at Bernard. His voice was clear and resolute. "Teach me swordsmanship properly. From now on, I'll give it everything I have. Bernard studied him for a moment. Though he didn't understand what had come over Yuri, he could sense the sincerity in his voice. Without a word, Bernard took a stance. A faint blue aura shimmered along his blade. Very well, he said. From this moment on, your real training begins. Without warning, Bernard charged. Yuri managed to block the attack and quickly shouted, "Wait!" Bernard stepped back, giving him a moment. Yuri reset his stance, but his heart pounded with fear. I forgot, he thought. Before joining Briol, Bernard was once called the Sword Demon. The training resumed, and by the time it ended, Yuri collapsed onto the ground, throwing his sword aside and gasping for breath. His entire body ached. So this is what it feels like to train under the real Sword Demon. Yuri was exhausted. If he hadn't retained his experience from his mercenary life, he was certain he would have been completely overwhelmed. Lying on the grass, he raised a trembling hand toward the sky, breathing heavily. It's exhausting, but if I keep training like this, I'll improve fast. I'm sure of it. Despite his fatigue, Yuri felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Meanwhile, Bernard stood silently nearby, surprised. He blocked all of my attacks. When did he get this good? Bernard wondered. Something about Yuri had changed, and it wasn't just his skill. As Yuri continued to rest, Aina came running toward him in a panic. Young master, please stop the training and come quickly. Your father is asking for you. Yuri sat up, confused. What's going on? Aina caught her breath and explained. Count Johannes has arrived. He brought his son with him. The name struck Yuri like lightning. Got Barkvar. Fury surged through him. In his previous life, Got was the one who betrayed the kingdom, opening the gates to the empire and leading to Briol's fall. Yuri clenched his fists and asked, "Where is that guy?" The scene shifts to the dining table, where Yuri's father, elder brother, Count Johannes, and his sons are gathered for a meal. As they eat, Count Johannes compliments Yuri's sudden change in behavior. Not only that, he notes, Yuri's physique also appears much stronger and more refined than before. Chuckling, Yuri's father replies, "It seems my son must have eaten something strange." Count Johannes laughs heartily and jokes, "Then I'd like to feed my son the same thing." Yuri's father then offers a compliment to Count Johannes' son, praising him for being intelligent and well-mannered. Pleased by the praise, Count Johannes humbly admits, he still has a lot to learn, but I appreciate the kind words. Barkvar, Count Johannes' son, sits quietly. His expression is serious, but when he looks at Yuri's elder brother, his face brightens. It's clear he holds admiration for him. However, when Barkvar glances at Yuri, he is met with a sharp, intimidating stare. Yuri's eyes are filled with barely contained aggression, and Barkvar begins to sweat nervously under the intensity of it. Yuri's elder brother leans in and whispers, "You and Barkvar, not on good terms?" Yuri nods slightly and whispers back, "He betrayed me." With a mischievous smile, his brother tries to provoke him. Is the great Yuri going to let that slide? Yuri looks at him quietly, still pretending to be dignified while looking for drama. He thinks, "You haven't changed one bit." Just then, Barkvar closes his eyes and reopens them, his gaze now filled with fury. Yuri watches in silence, thinking to himself that Barkvar's temper needs to be corrected for his own good. I won't let the same mistakes repeat in this life. Yuri recalls how, in his previous life, he had fought Barkvar at this exact time. But it had been a one-sided battle, one that may have been the beginning of Barkvar's resentment toward the kingdom and toward Yuri. Later, at the training grounds, Yuri tosses a wooden sword to Barkvar. "I've heard you're decent with a sword," he says. Barkvar catches it and replies, "I have some skill, but why ask me that all of a sudden?" Yuri narrows his eyes. "Because this kingdom has no place for narrow-minded knights." Barkvar retorts, "I'm not even an official knight yet." "All the more reason," Yuri says, raising his own sword. "I'll treat you as someone destined to become one. Let's see if you're worthy." Barkvar reluctantly accepts. "Fine." Yuri charges forward and declares it a duel. Barkvar scowls. "Coward," he mutters, just before Yuri kicks up sand with his boot, sending it into Barkvar's eyes. Enraged but composed, Barkvar says, "A knight must uphold the code of honor." Hearing that, Yuri suddenly throws away his sword. Barkvar blinks in confusion. Before he can react, Yuri rushes in and lands a clean kick, knocking Barkvar to the ground. Yuri grabs his sword and points it at Barkvar. In his past life, Barkvar betrayed his kingdom and sold out his father's honor to the Empire for information. Yuri looks down at him and says, "Your father is a great count, a respected knight. Do you know why such a title exists?" He lifts the blade slightly, giving Barkvar space to answer. "I understand the hunger to survive," Yuri continues. "But in this life, I won't allow a single knight under my watch to carry such a weak sense of duty." Then he extends his hand to Barkvar. Still stunned, Barkvar mutters, "I don't understand what you mean." Yuri doesn't flinch. "Then let me ask again, why is your father a count? Who gave him that power?" Barkvar says nothing. "Whatever the situation," Yuri adds, "you must strive to understand its essence and reflect deeply on what I've said." After a long pause, Barkvar nods and takes Yuri's hand. After standing up, he departs from there. Once he's gone, Yuri's elder brother, who had been watching the duel from a distance, steps forward, grinning. "That was entertaining. I liked the fight," he says. Yuri raises an eyebrow. "You thought I'd lose?" "Of course," his brother replies without hesitation. "I was sure you'd lose." Yuri says nothing and quietly begins brushing dust off his clothes. Then he looks up and asks, "What do you think of me?" His brother smirks. "You're the kingdom's biggest troublemaker." Yuri nods slowly. He's not wrong. But then he adds, "I'm not going to live like that anymore. So maybe you should stop messing around too." His brother stares at him, stunned. "What happened to you? Did you lose a few screws in your head?" The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden hue over the training grounds. Yuri, completely exhausted, finally collapsed onto the ground, breathing heavily. Bernard stepped forward, nodding in approval. "Well done," he said. "That's enough for today." After a brief pause, Bernard added, "It's about time you begin learning a mana method." Yuri blinked in surprise. "You're saying that already?" Bernard smirked slightly. "Yes, but not my method." Yuri furrowed his brows. "Then whose? Will you not teach me your own?" Bernard shook his head. "My mana method isn't suited for someone of your caliber or disposition. Instead, I suggest you learn the Briol method." "Why?" Yuri asked, curious. Bernard explained, "The Briol method is well balanced. Its energy flow is smooth, and its efficiency is exceptional. For someone with your potential, it's the most reliable path forward." Yuri reflected quietly. "In my previous life, I mastered the Briol method. As a mercenary, I even came close to pushing it to its absolute limit." He stared into the distance, lost in thought. Noticing Yuri's silence, Bernard asked, "You're considering a different method, aren't you?" After a long moment, Yuri spoke. "I want you to recommend someone from the Royal Guard. Not necessarily someone already skilled, but someone with exceptional potential. I want to see it for myself." A memory stirred within him. There was one technique, one I couldn't even attempt in my past life. Bernard placed a hand on his chin, thinking carefully. "If it's potential you're after, then Jared might be the right choice." At that moment, Barkvar, who had been nearby, nodded in agreement. "Jared fits that description perfectly." Yuri remembered Jared from the final days of the war in his past life. Despite his mediocre skills and lackluster discipline, Jared had somehow survived against all odds. In truth, Yuri had once been astonished that someone like him had made it through so much. He recalled one particular battle, where Jared, frustrated and overwhelmed, had confided in him. The truth was that Jared possessed incredible natural talent, but he had never honed it. By the time the war truly began, both he and Yuri had become like dull, rusted swords. Now, hearing Bernard's suggestion, Yuri stood up and brushed the dirt from his uniform. Without another word, he began walking. "I'll go see him myself," he said. "It's time I knocked some sense into him." The scene shifts to the Knights' training grounds, where several trainees are practicing their swordsmanship under the setting sun. A brown-haired man watches them with quiet focus. Suddenly, the doors swing open. Yuri enters. The brown-haired man turns to him and asks, "What brings you to the training grounds, Your Highness?" "I just wanted to see how the Knights are doing," Yuri replies calmly. The man nods. "Everyone's working hard," he says, then adds with a smile, "though none of us can compare to you." He returns his attention to the training field, watching the Knights from the elevated platform with a look of pride. Yuri scans the field but doesn't see who he's looking for. "Where's Jared?" he asks. Realization dawns on the brown-haired man's face. Ah, you mean the new rookie? He points across the training field. There, that's Jared. Yuri narrows his eyes as he observes Jared training. So this is what Bernard meant, he thinks. While Jared is going through the motions, he's clearly doing only the bare minimum. That's how he became a rusty sword in the last life. Yuri murmurs to himself. Turning to the man, Yuri says, Rosso, bring me a wooden sword. I'd like to spar. Rosso blinks in surprise, then nods. Yes, Your Highness. Who do you wish to spar with? Yuri points directly at Jared. Him. A few minutes later, the training ground is cleared, and the knights gather to watch the sparring session between Yuri and Jared. The atmosphere grows lively, with knights cheering Jared on, hoping he won't be knocked out too quickly. Jared, however, doesn't seem happy at all about the situation. I've heard you have great potential as a knight, Yuri says to Jared. Show me what kind of knight you are. Though clearly reluctant, Jared nods and takes his stance. Without hesitation, Yuri charges forward. Jared blocks the attack effortlessly, his expression calm and composed. Your movements are sharp, Yuri remarks. Precise. The knights begin cheering for Yuri, but Jared grows increasingly uneasy. He's doing better than I expected, but something feels off. Yuri keeps pressing him, keeping the pace consistent and leaving Jared with no choice but to stay on the defensive. Slowly, Jared realizes something. Yuri is syncing his movements to match mine. Yuri tightens the tempo of the duel, controlling the rhythm with ease. Isn't this boring for you? He asks coldly. We're just putting on a show. Let's go all out. With that, Yuri launches an unexpected attack. Jared reacts quickly and blocks it, earning Yuri's praise. The duel intensifies. Yuri continues his relentless assault while Jared focuses on dodging, growing more pressured by the minute. I underestimated this, Jared thinks. I thought this would be easy. Jared finally strikes back with force. The power behind the blow is enough to stagger Yuri. Despite his past life experience, Yuri knows he's still not at Jared's level. He's a seasoned knight, Yuri admits silently. But even so, I'll land at least one clean hit. Yuri maintains his composure. Then, as Jared momentarily loses balance, Yuri capitalizes on the opening and delivers a precise strike. Gasps erupt from the watching knights. He landed a hit, someone exclaims. The knights begin praising Yuri's swordsmanship. Yuri resets his stance and asks Jared, You're not holding back, are you? Jared shakes his head. No, I'm not. It's strange. I was sure I had the upper hand, but now, I'm the one on the defensive. Yuri moves in again, launching another attack. Jared narrowly dodges it. Frustration builds within Jared. His expression hardens. That's enough. To everyone's surprise, Jared activates his mana method. Rosso and the knights gasp. He's using mana? Against the third prince, someone whispers. Furious, Jared takes his stance, mana flaring around him. He attacks, and though Yuri narrowly dodges, the edge of Jared's blade grazes his forehead, leaving a thin cut. Your Highness. Rosso and the knights rush forward. Yuri raises his hand. I'm fine. This is what sparring looks like, don't worry. Without missing a beat, he tears a strip of cloth and binds it around his forehead. Then he looks back at Jared. Pick up your sword. We're just getting started. Yuri smiles, gripping his weapon tightly. They clash again, and Jared begins to realize something. He's different from me. Unlike Jared, who had been holding back, Yuri was pushing himself to the absolute limit and beyond. Every swing, every step, was driven by relentless effort. He's not just fighting. He's growing, Jared thought. He's becoming something more. And in that moment, Jared knew this was no ordinary prince. This was a warrior on a path he refused to turn back from. Yuri and Jared stood face to face, both in their battle stances. Jared is feeling warmed up and excited, an emotion he had never experienced, not even when fighting opponents far stronger than himself. Fueled by adrenaline, Jared launched an aggressive attack. Yuri blocked it with ease, only intensifying Jared's frustration. In response, Yuri leapt forward to strike, but Jared swiftly dodged, sensing something unusual surging from within Yuri. Seeing an opening, Jared retaliated with a powerful mana-infused technique. Although Yuri managed to block the strike, the impact shattered his wooden sword in half. Yuri let out a breath, followed by a laugh. Looks like the match is over, he said. Exhausted, Gerard relaxed his stance and settled down. Yuri approached him, extending his hand. I learned something from you today, he said. Gerard shook his hand firmly. Likewise. That was impressive. As they stood there, Gerard couldn't shake what he had just witnessed. Yuri's unwavering fighting spirit and sheer determination. It was something Gerard had never seen before, and it lingered in his mind, stirring his curiosity. Yuri noticed Gerard spacing out. What are you doing? He asked. Startled, Gerard snapped out of it. Yuri continued. You're just standing there, after making the third prince bleed? Gerard's eyes widened in horror. I am so sorry, he exclaimed, bowing repeatedly before turning and running away in panic. Yuri let out a small chuckle and collapsed onto the ground to catch his breath. That brought back memories, he thought. Meanwhile, the other knights began cheering for Yuri's performance. Amidst the applause, Rosso spotted someone at the entrance. Captain, when did you get here? The man standing there gave a calm nod. Just now. He was none other than Sand, the captain of Briol's royal guard. His eyes focused on Yuri, who lay resting on the training ground. A few days later, Gerard was walking near the palace gardens when he was startled to find the third prince waiting for him. I heard you just finished your shift, Yuri said. Good. Come with me. We've got something to do today. Gerard blinked. Your Highness, I was planning to train. Yuri turned around with a sly smile. It's good that your mindset has improved. And since I helped you with that, don't you think it's time to repay the favor? Left with no choice, Gerard reluctantly agreed. Yuri looked him over. He's got some strength now. Still not enough, but it'll do for now. As they walked together, Gerard asked, Where exactly are we going? Quiet, Yuri replied. Just follow me. Gerard frowned. I won't let you do anything reckless. Yuri grinned. Don't worry. We're not going alone. Someone else is coming too. Who? Yuri cupped his hands and shouted, Hernando. From a nearby corridor, a man turned at the sound of his name. It was Hernando, Briol's court mage. He approached, eyebrow raised. What do you need, Your Highness? Yuri skipped the formalities. I need you to assist me. We're heading out. Hernando gave an apologetic smile. I'd love to help, but I've got somewhere to be. Yuri leaned closer. If you come with me, I'll pay off your debts. Hernando's eyes widened in shock. Are you serious? I am, Yuri confirmed. And I'll even settle the debt you owe me from last time. To seal his sincerity, Yuri added, Have you ever known me to lie? Hernando raised an eyebrow. No. Yuri beamed. Yuri turned to leave. I'll pay it. So come along. Hernando reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded contract. Sign this first, he said. Yuri stared at it in disbelief. So this is what my title as the third prince of Briol is worth? Sighing, he turned to Gerard. You'll be my guarantor. Gerard stiffened. Wait, what? I'm not asking you to co-sign the contract, Yuri said. Just be a witness to my words. Gerard sighed. If you say so. Finally, with the matter settled, they set off. So where are we going? Hernando asked. You brought a knight and a mage. That's not exactly a stroll in the gardens. Yuri grinned. We're going to Sword Mountain. Both Hernando and Gerard exchanged confused glances. Sword Mountain. Yuri laughed. That's right. We're going to loot our ancestors' dungeon. The scene shifts to Yuri, Gerard, and Hernando walking through a hidden passage beneath the palace, one that few even knew existed. Gerard, holding a torch and leading the way, glances back and asks Yuri what lies at the end of the tunnel. It leads to Sword Mountain, Yuri replies. Gerard blinks, confused. All I know about Sword Mountain is the legend tied to the progenitor. Yuri nods. The legend is true. In his past life, after the Empire had taken over Briol, Yuri read in a newspaper that a dungeon had been discovered within Sword Mountain. The report stated that the Empire had excavated the legacy of Briol's progenitor from the site, causing a massive uproar. The passage they now walked had originally been intended as an escape route, which was why the Briol legacy had been handed over to the Empire before it could ever be used. But this time, things were different. Yuri was no longer running from responsibility. In this life, he was determined to face everything head-on, to give his all and move forward. He wanted to see the legacy his ancestor left behind with his own eyes. The scene then transitions to a beautiful forest as Yuri pushes open the dungeon door, revealing a path that leads into the woods. As they begin walking, Hernando looks around and comments, If we keep heading straight, we'll eventually reach Sword Mountain. Curious, he asks, "By the way, how did you even get the key to that door?" "It's an artifact." Yuri remains silent for a moment, recalling how he had found the key hidden in the corner of the study room, just like in his past life. Back then, he hadn't known its significance, and that ignorance had come at a cost. The memory stung. "It doesn't concern you," Yuri finally replies. As they walk deeper into the forest, Hernando brushes against a thorny plant, letting out a yelp as his hand gets cut. "Be careful," Yuri warns. "These plants have sharp leaves. Stay close." Hernando, now irritated, leans toward Gerard and mutters, "Has Yuri been eating something strange lately?" Gerard nods. It seems like it. His behavior has completely changed. Before they can say more, Yuri suddenly shouts, "Hurry up! Follow me!" Startled, they catch up. Hernando mumbles, "Well, his temperament definitely hasn't changed." Suddenly, Yuri freezes. He motions for them to stop. "Direwolves," he whispers. "They're moving in packs, and there could be more nearby." Gerard frowns. "How do you know that?" "I read about it," Yuri answers casually. Hernando gapes. "You read a book?" Ignoring the remark, Yuri says, "Stay low. They haven't noticed us yet. Let's slip past quietly." Unfortunately, as Hernando takes a step, he snaps a twig. The sharp crack echoes through the woods. He grimaces. "I'm so sorry, but it's too late. The direwolves have already spotted them." They charge. Gerard springs into action, drawing his sword and immediately taking down one of the beasts. "Impressive," Yuri comments. "But now you've caught the attention of their alpha." A deep howl pierces the air, and soon, the pack surrounds them. Gerard immediately instructs, "Stay behind me. Don't get separated." He fends off one wolf after another, but the numbers are overwhelming. Hernando watches in awe. His fighting spirit is incredible. Yuri nods. Gerard is skilled, but he's still not strong enough to handle a pack of this size. As Gerard begins to struggle, Yuri calls out to Hernando, "My father had complete faith in your abilities, Hernando. It's time you proved him right." Hernando chuckles. "So, you really want to get your money's worth out of a battle mage, huh?" Gerard, confused, glances back. "What?" Before he can finish, Hernando conjures a fireball and hurls it toward the direwolf Gerard is locked in combat with. Gerard barely dodges in time, separating himself from both the fireball and the beast. The scene transitions to a cliff at the peak of Sword Mountain. Hernando wipes his brow. "I didn't expect to see monsters other than direwolves." Gerard, breathing heavily, agrees. "We may have delayed them, but we've made it." Yuri scans the area, searching for something. Gerard looks around, puzzled. "Are we in the right place? I don't see any relics." Yuri walks up to a massive stone. "We are." He kneels and begins digging. Gerard rushes over. "Wait, what are you doing?" "There's something here," Yuri explains. Seeing Yuri dig with such urgency, Gerard joins him. "Hernando, help us." Hernando groans. A battle mage wounding his hands, what a disgrace. After some effort, Yuri finally pulls something from the ground. A magnificent sword, still gleaming despite being buried for decades. It looks untouched by time. On the blade is a single word, "Guilty." Gerard stares. Is this the founder's relic?" "I'm not sure," Yuri replies. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake violently. Yuri laughs. "We're about to find out." The next moment, the earth gives way, and all three of them plunge into a deep, hidden pit. All three of them fell into what appeared to be a dungeon, at the center of which stood a massive crystal. Yuri was caught and saved by Gerard, who managed to cushion his own fall by reinforcing his body using a mana method. Noticing this, Yuri commented with admiration, "You used mana to protect yourself? Impressive." Hernando, meanwhile, floated gently down using a levitation spell. As he landed and glanced around, he muttered, "This place is far deeper than I imagined." Seeing Hernando's calm descent, Yuri gripped the hilt of his sword. He prioritized his own safety over mine. The gesture wasn't lost on Hernando, who began sweating nervously. It was an emergency. I didn't mean to ignore you, just reacted instinctively." Suddenly, Hernando spun around, sensing something. His expression changed to one of alarm. "Wait, what is that?" Yuri glanced over. "Trying to change the subject now?" "No," Hernando shouted, pointing ahead. "There's a ghost in armor walking toward us." Yuri turned and froze. A figure clad in heavy armor slowly approached, its body radiating a dark, eerie energy. "It's a death knight," Yuri muttered. Understanding the danger, he quickly called out, "Gerard, wake up!" Gerard was still groggy, but with a swift kick from Yuri, he snapped to attention. "What's happening?" Gerard's eyes widened when he saw the Death Knight. He immediately leapt into a battle stance, placing himself between Yuri and the threat. Yuri, impressed by his quick reaction, nodded silently. The Death Knight continued its approach, and then suddenly stopped. Yuri began to explain. A Death Knight is a warrior resurrected from death. In most cases, they become far stronger than they were in life. Despite the tension, Yuri stepped forward. "But I don't think this one is hostile." "What makes you say that?" Gerard asked, tense. "I can feel it," Yuri replied. "This Death Knight is guarding the Founder's dungeon. There's no way he would attack someone who shares the Founder's blood." He walked toward the Death Knight. "Am I right?" The Death Knight said nothing. Instead, it silently drew its sword, startling both Gerard and Hernando. With lightning speed, the Death Knight swung his sword, but Yuri dodged. The blade falls into the ground, missing him by inches. From behind, Hernando gasped, I can't believe you were able to dodge the strike." Yuri glared. "Shut up." Hernando flinched. "I was surprised, that's all." Just then, the Death Knight finally spoke. "That arrogant tone. You sound just like the Founder." Then, he sheathed his sword. Yuri narrowed his eyes. "Founder? You mean Eric Briol?" At the mention of the name, both Gerard and Hernando gasped. Eric Briol. The name was legendary. The peerless swordsman who had once conquered the continent with a single blade. The first king and founder of Briol, the land of knights. "Are you talking about him?" Yuri asked. The Death Knight nodded. "You are the first to arrive here. Unless the wielder is a descendant of Briol, they cannot draw that sword." Yuri unsheathed the relic sword he had found. This is really the peerless sword wielded by the Founder." But the Death Knight corrected him. "That sword belonged to me when I was alive." Yuri made a strange face. The Death Knight frowned. "What's that look for? You have a problem with that?" Yuri quickly waved his hand, sweating. "No, not at all. I just feel bad for touching your personal weapon without permission." The atmosphere shifted. The Death Knight stared at Yuri. "Why are you here?" Yuri gripped the sword tightly. "I am Yuri Briol, third prince of the Briol kingdom, and rightful heir to Eric Briol's legacy. I have come to inherit that legacy." The Death Knight turned his back and began walking toward the massive crystal. "Then the time has come. I must fulfill my duty." Yuri followed without hesitation. Gerard, however, was frozen. "This can't be real. We're in the Founder's dungeon, talking with a Death Knight. This isn't what I imagined when I became a royal guard." As he remained deep in thought, Yuri turned around. "What are you doing?" Startled, Gerard looked up, his mind flashing back to a moment during the war, when he and Yuri had shared a brief but meaningful exchange. "You coming or not?" Yuri asked. Gerard hesitated, then scratched his head. "Yeah, I'm coming." He followed. The Death Knight approached the giant crystal and sat upon it. The formation revealed it was not just a stone, but the backrest of an ancient throne. The crystal began to glow brighter and brighter. The Death Knight closed his eyes. "I hope all three of you are worthy." Suddenly, Yuri found himself standing alone in a desert-like expanse. Confused, he scanned the horizon. "Where am I?" In the distance, he spotted a white figure approaching, clad in armor, sword in hand. "Is that the Founder of Briol?" As the figure drew closer and took a battle stance, Yuri's eyes narrowed. "No, that's not human." The figure attacked. Yuri blocked and reeled back, studying the strange entity. "It's not a person, it's a mana method given form." The scene shifts to the mysterious white, human-like figure. It places a finger on its chest, gathering mana at its core, and then channels that energy into its sword. Yuri observes closely, wondering if the figure is trying to teach him how to control and infuse mana into his weapon. After demonstrating the technique, the figure points its sword at Yuri, clearly challenging him to fight. Yuri quickly realizes what's happening. The figure wants him to replicate the process during combat. Yuri chuckles to himself. "My ancestors are out of their minds," he mutters. "Trying to teach mana control to someone who hasn't even learned a proper method yet, and doing it in the middle of a fight." But he also knows, this is something only someone in their second life could attempt. "Which means I can do it," he affirms internally. Yuri drops into a seated position, pressing his hands to the ground. A faint blue mana begins to form around his palms, growing stronger and more vibrant with each passing second. He begins to understand the technique the white figure was showing him. Standing, Yuri calls out, sword now imbued with mana. All right, let's continue. I think I get the gist of it, but I'm still figuring it out. The figure laughs in response, taking its stance once again. Yuri steadies his breathing, focusing his mind. In the near future, the Empire will bare its fangs and invade Brioel. I won't let that happen again. He readies his sword. This time, I will destroy their army. I will not repeat my past mistakes. With newfound determination, Yuri charges forward, attacking the figure with the intent to absorb and learn the swordsmanship of Eric Brioel, the founder of Brioel himself. The figure counters his strike with ease, laughing as their blades clash. The scene shifts. Gerard opens his eyes and finds himself in a familiar training ground. Only now, it's completely deserted. No knights, no sound, no presence. Just silence. This isn't a dream, he tells himself, standing cautiously. A sudden noise startles him. Gerard instinctively places a hand on his sword and calls out, "Who's there? Show yourself." From behind him, a figure steps forward, someone who looks exactly like him. Gerard turns quickly, then starts laughing. A doppelganger, huh? So this is part of the Death Knight's test. He draws his sword. Do you have my name too? The other Gerard smirks. Don't fight your fate. Gerard frowns. What does that mean? His doppelganger steps closer. You became a royal knight because you wanted an easy, comfortable life. But the more you cling to Yuri, the more you're straying from your path. Keep this up, and your life will end in misery. Gerard exhales slowly and stares at his reflection on the blade. If this were the old me, I might have agreed. But that was before he had sparred and spoken with Yuri. Before his mindset had changed. You're wrong, Gerard said. You're just a fake, so you wouldn't understand. A sword, once swung, can't be taken back. Dwelling on the past just dulls your edge. The doppelganger narrowed his eyes, drew his sword, and unleashed a mana-infused strike. Gerard parried the blow. Your attacks are simple, he observed. All defense. No conviction. No risk. He stepped forward and broke through the guard, landing a clean hit. You're nothing but a boring version of my past self. The doppelganger stumbled and hit the ground, suddenly breaking apart, morphing it into a grotesque, goblin-like creature made of sludge. So this is your real form. Gerard thought grimly. He assumed his stance again, thinking of Yuri. If I'm in a fight here, Yuri must be facing something too. With renewed resolve, he prepared a finishing attack, silently praying, "Please, overcome it, Yuri." The scene cuts back to the battlefield where Yuri faces off against the white figure. Yuri now sits on a stone, visibly defeated. The white figure approaches slowly, raising its sword, ready to strike. Just as the white, human-like figure was about to strike, Yuri grabbed his sword, infused it with mana, and launched a counterattack, finally landing a hit. Although the strike connected, the figure remained unharmed, stepping back to regain its balance. Yuri steadied his stance, wondering how much time had passed. Things had grown dangerous, but thanks to the extended sparring, Yuri had learned how to utilize the figure's mana method. More importantly, he had finally understood how to properly wield his sword. As Yuri processed these thoughts, he noticed the white figure's sword beginning to crumble. Moments later, the figure itself started to fade. Before vanishing entirely, it waved goodbye. Realizing time was up, Yuri gave a respectful nod and thanked the figure for the lesson. Soon after, and both he and the figure disappeared from the illusionary world. The scene shifts back to the dungeon. Yuri opened his eyes and found himself lying on the stone floor once again. Beside him, Gerard and Hernando were also awakening, checking on one another. The Death Knight, still seated upon the crystalline throne, observed them calmly. "It seems you all had a pleasant dream," he remarked. Yuri stood and asked, "What was that exactly?" The Death Knight rose to his feet. It was Eric's final plan, a legacy meant for the heir of Brioel, should one ever come seeking the dungeon. Yuri's expression darkened. In his past life, the Empire had completely destroyed Sword Mountain. As a result, no member of the Brioel family had ever reached the dungeon. With that in mind, he turned to the Death Knight. That mana method, the one the figure used, Did the founder really use it? The Death Knight shook his head. No, that wasn't Eric's method. It was the last legacy left behind by me. Yuri's eyes widened. The Death Knight continued. It was a culmination of all the enlightenment I gained during my final years wandering the East. And you, Yuri, are the first to inherit it. Surprised, Yuri asked. Then why wasn't this passed down directly through the royal family? The Death Knight responded solemnly. Because the dungeon only reveals itself when the time is right. And now that it has opened, it means the time to use that power is approaching. Yuri attempted to press further. When exactly is that time? But the Death Knight did not answer. You'll have to discover that for yourself. Yuri raised his sword, imbuing it with mana. Then tell me, what is the name of this mana method? The Death Knight answered firmly. It is called Soul Severance. He then instructed, kneel. Yuri dropped to one knee. The Death Knight placed his hand on Yuri's head. Never fear your enemies. Yes, Yuri responded. Act upon your beliefs, the Death Knight continued. Fulfill your duty to the very end. I will, Yuri said. Then, suddenly, the Death Knight gripped Yuri's hair and violently yanked it back. But above all else, remember this. Brielle never abandons its honor, even in death. With those final words, the Death Knight vanished into the air, leaving only silence behind. Yuri's eyes glowed red as he stared at the empty space where the knight had stood. The next morning, Aina came to wake Yuri up. You look exhausted, she said. Is it because you came back to the castle so late last night? Yuri looked like he'd fall asleep again if he so much as lay back down. He yawned and apologized. I visited the royal palace archives. That piqued Aina's curiosity. What for all of a sudden? There was a record I needed to find, Yuri replied. Something important. Among the historical texts in the archive, Yuri had discovered a note, one stating that the founder, Eric Brielle, had a brother, a nameless man who abandoned his honor and vanished from history. That was when Yuri realized the truth. The Death Knight was Eric's brother, and the original owner of the sword Yuri had unearthed. As Yuri rose from bed, Aina informed him, Your father is waiting for you. Please get dressed quickly. Why? Yuri asked. I don't know the reason, Aina admitted. But I heard he summoned you right after speaking with Lord Hernando. Yuri froze for a moment. Of course, Hernando must have told him everything. He recalled how, just before they left the Sword Forest, Hernando had casually mentioned, I'll be reporting all this to your father. Turning to Hernando, Yuri had asked, Is that really necessary? Hernando had only laughed. I think it is. With a resigned sigh, Yuri dressed quickly and headed to the audience chamber. When he arrived, he asked, Did you summon me, father? His father nodded. Yes. Hernando told me everything. Not only did you leave the palace without permission, you also discovered the founder's dungeon atop Sword Mountain. Yuri scratched his head. It kind of turned out that way. His father stepped down from the throne and approached him. Lately, everyone's been telling me how much you've changed. Aina, Bernard, Johannes, and now even Hernando. He placed a hand on Yuri's head. So tell me, he said softly, what brought about this change? Yuri looked away and began stepping back. His father narrowed his eyes. Why aren't you answering? I will, Yuri said quietly. Then why step back like that? And with that look on your face? Because your fist is clenched. His father blinked, then relaxed his hand. All right, tell me. Yuri took a breath. I had a dream. A long one. In that dream, I committed a great crime. His father's expression turned serious. What kind of crime?